Hello and welcome to another video review. This is Jedi Knight Mysteries of the Sith for PC. Now, despite dropping the Dark Forces moniker, it is the expansion pack Jedi Knight Dark Forces 2. It was released about a year after the original, and it was to a surprisingly large amount of acclaim. And this was the start of the Dark Forces series, no longer saying Dark Forces in the title, but rather it was just Jedi Knight, the series. Anyway, this originally did require the base game in order to play it, but now that they've released it on Steam, it is a standalone. So if you want to just play Mysteries of the Sith, you can grab Mysteries of the Sith and play through that without actually having the original Dark Forces 2 installed. And it introduced a number of changes to the game, some of which were just minor changes, like engine tweaks, for instance. Really the only thing that changed between this and the original game, they got rid of the FMV cutscenes and instead put in engine-rendered cutscenes and further modified the engine, which apparently, correction here, it is the Sith engine, not the Quake engine, although I'm pretty sure the Sith engine is heavily based on the Quake engine. Much like the Jedi engine, which ran Dark Forces 1, was pretty much a reverse-engineered version of the Doom engine. Anyway, it did introduce a few changes to that, like colored lighting, for instance. They now have colored lighting schemes and levels, which you didn't have before. They added in a few tweaks to the models and textures and stuff like that. But like I said, they also render the cutscenes in the engine now, rather than the actual FMV cutscenes that were in the original game. And to be honest with you, I really don't like the new direction. This was back when engine-rendered cutscenes ended up looking terrible no matter what you did to them. So everybody just kind of bobs their head around when they're talking, and everything looks very stiff and robotic. It's like, not pleasant to look at. As opposed to these really nicely done FMV cutscenes that were in the original Dark Forces 2, that obviously had a lot of effort put into them, and ended up being very good. So that's a little bit of a letdown, but other than that, there really weren't a huge amount of changes to the graphics or even the sound design. The voice acting is a little bit weaker than it was in the original Dark Forces 2, and I think that's just because they were trying to go for a cheaper budget with this one or something. I really don't know. But the voice acting is a little weaker. It's not the same people. I mean, Kyle Katarn's not voiced by the same guy who was playing him in, of course, Dark Forces 2. But, oh well. It still works out okay. The voice acting is not terrible, but it did change between the two games, and it's like, not so great a change. Sound effects are pretty much the same. Music is exactly the same. Other than that, that's all that changed. So what really matters are the changes to the story and the gameplay. Now, the story takes place 5 years after the events of Dark Forces 2, and it assumes you took one of the two particular endings. So Kyle is now a Jedi Master, and he has taken on his apprentice, who is Mara Jade. And if you don't know who Mara Jade is, she is this very beloved character in the extended universe. Long backstory, she was an agent for the Empire, and eventually she becomes a Jedi. And it goes further than that, but I don't want to spoil too much. Anyway, you are basically working for the New Republic at this point, and at the start of the game you actually play as Kyle, and he has quite a few resources available to him. He has a large amount of force powers. He's obviously quite a powerful Jedi at this point. But then you assume the role of Mara Jade after Kyle goes off to find the Sith temple on the planet Droman Kas. And so Jade has to go on a bunch of assignments for the New Republic, and eventually she finds out Kyle has broken contact with everybody, and she goes to investigate. I'm not going to spoil any more of the story for you, because that's where it gets a little weird. Suffice to say, it is a little weaker than Jedi Knight. In fact, it's quite a bit weaker. I found the story to be not particularly impressive at all, and especially because it has one ending. That ending's just kind of like, whatever. So, the story is weaker in this one, and it's not what drives this game more. What drives this one more is that they massively improve the gameplay. All the stuff that was in the original Dark Forces 2 is back, except for Deadly Sight, I believe. Although I can't remember off the top of my head if it's in there. But they added in a lot more force powers. They added in a few new weapons and even some little bonuses for those weapons. Like the Stormtrooper rifle, for instance, now actually has a scope on it. You'll eventually get a scope, and you can zoom in and shoot, and that's kind of cool. They also added in like secondary fires for a couple of things as well. But anyway, you get a few new weapons. The carbonite gun, for instance, is pretty cool. But for the most part, everything is as it was in the original Dark Forces 2. They just added in more stuff. Some of the new powers include like lightsaber throw and chain lightning, and those are fun to use. And so the new powers are very welcome, and that's a very good thing. They also lightened up on the puzzles a little bit, and I'm greatly appreciative of that, because some of the puzzles in Dark Forces 2 were just stupid, to the point where it was irritating to play through a couple of the levels in particular, and they were just annoying. That never really happened in Mysteries of the Sith. I did kind of get lost a couple of times, because a couple of the levels are a little bit labyrinthine, but other than that, there really isn't a huge amount of negative parts of the gameplay. It's pretty much just Dark Forces 2, only with more stuff in it, and improvements made to a bunch of things, like the AI, for instance. In Dark Forces 2, when you would like force pull a weapon out of somebody's hands, they would just run around like a chicken with their head cut off. Now they'll actually start coming after you and trying to punch you to death. And while that is hilarious, and kind of silly, because you can just whack them with your lightsaber and kill them in basically one hit, but it is hilarious to watch, and it's a nice little addition to the AI. So they'll react a little bit better to your situations. But one thing I noticed, it was a little easier than Jedi Knight Dark Forces 2. And that's not really a put-off, because Dark Forces 2 could get pretty difficult at times. So if you thought that Dark Forces 2 was too easy, then I don't really recommend Mysteries of the Sith. But if you liked Dark Forces 2 and you're just wanting more of that, then Mysteries of the Sith is a perfectly acceptable way to go. They did make improvements to multiplayer, although, like I said in my Dark Forces 2 review, I never actually played the multiplayer to this game, because I never really had anybody to play it with. Nobody I knew had it at the time. So I really can't say much about the multiplayer. They did add in new stuff. Instead of the Capture the Flag mode, you have Capture the Asalimari, which is you steal a Asali mirror and you just return it. It's the same thing, only with the Asali mirror, and it actually reduces the force powers of whoever's carrying it, so that's kind of a cool little thing. Different maps and stuff like that, and you also get new character models and such, and they actually have advantages and disadvantages, so that's kind of cool as well. So they really did kind of expand the multiplayer quite a bit, but like I said, I never got to play it. So really, I can recommend this to people who like Dark Forces 2 and just want more, or people who are just really interested in Mara Jade, because this is one of the few games where, well, actually I think it's the only game where she's actually in it. And on top of that, this is one of the few games I know of with female protagonist, so that kind of counts for something as well. So overall, I'd say play it if you're a fan of Dark Forces 2. It really doesn't have much appeal outside of that, though, so I'd say play Dark Forces 2 first, and then decide whether you want to play Mysteries of the Sith. Thanks for watching.